I want to tell you about the exact moment my mother-in-law walked into my office for a consultation. She sat down across from my desk. And she spent 4 full minutes complaining about her daughter-in-law before she realized she was talking to me. 4 minutes. I counted them on the clock behind her head. While she told a complete stranger, who happened to run her own company, that her son's wife had trapped him into marriage and ruined his future. She had no idea the trap she was describing was sitting 6 feet away from her, holding a folder with her name on it. My name is Renata Calloway. I'm 34 years old. And this is the story of 5 years of being called a mistake. By the same woman who walked into my office last Tuesday looking for help. Stay with me. Because what happened in the next 20 minutes of that meeting is the part of this story I'm still thinking about. Welcome to Signed in Silence, where we tell quiet stories about the people who underestimated us. And the slow, undeniable way the truth eventually introduces itself. I met my husband Theo when I was 26. I was a junior consultant at a firm that fixed operations problems for mid-sized companies. He was an engineer at a manufacturing company we'd been hired to help. I was the analyst on his department. He brought me coffee on my 3rd day. Because he noticed I hadn't left my desk in 6 hours. That was, more or less, the whole courtship. Quiet. Practical. Built on respect. We dated for a year. We got engaged. And 4 months before the wedding, I found out I was pregnant. I want to be precise about the timeline here. Because the timeline is the entire foundation of everything that came after. We were already engaged. We already had a venue booked. We already had a life moving in a clear direction. The pregnancy didn't create the relationship. It just arrived inside one that already existed. Theo's mother, Diane, didn't see it that way. Or she saw it exactly the way that was most useful to her. As evidence that I'd engineered the whole thing. To trap her son. I met Diane for the first time at an engagement dinner. 6 months before I got pregnant. So she had plenty of time to form an opinion of me, based on nothing except who I actually was. And the opinion she formed, even then, was not particularly warm. Diane measures people through a very specific lens. Money. Family name. The visible trajectory of a career. And I came up short on all 3. I was the daughter of a high school teacher and a plumber. I went to a state university on scholarships and loans. I worked in a field she didn't understand. So she didn't respect it. When I told her about the pregnancy, at a family dinner, she set down her fork. With a precision I'd later learn was her signature move. The thing she did right before she said something designed to wound. Well, she said. I suppose that explains the rush to the altar. Theo told her that was unfair. She didn't apologize. She just moved the conversation somewhere else. The way she always did. That was the first cut. There would be many more. I want to walk through a few of them. Not because I'm interested in keeping score. But because the pattern matters for what comes later. A single comment is an opinion. 5 years of them is a worldview. And worldviews have consequences when reality eventually disagrees with them. At my baby shower, she told my mother, within earshot, that she hoped the baby wouldn't inherit my lack of direction. At Theo's 30th birthday, she gave a toast. Listed every accomplishment of his life. His degree. His promotion. His work ethic. Then she turned to me and said, and of course, we're all so glad Theo found someone to settle down with. Even if the timing was a little unconventional. The room laughed. The way rooms laugh at things that aren't actually jokes. When our daughter Iris was born, Diane visited the hospital for 11 minutes. She held the baby for maybe 90 seconds. Told Theo she looked just like him. She didn't. Iris looked almost entirely like me. Then Diane left to catch a flight that wasn't actually departing for another 6 hours. She called my consulting work my little hobby. She asked Theo once, in front of me, whether I'd ever considered getting a real job. Something with more stability. Now that you have a family to think about. I want to be honest. For the first 2 years, these comments landed. They landed because I was tired in the specific way new mothers are tired. And because I was building a business from almost nothing, 60-hour weeks, while also being the primary parent during the day. That part was a partnership, not something Theo created. But on the surface, to someone looking for evidence to support a story she'd already decided was true, I looked exactly like what Diane wanted me to look like. A woman who trapped her son, who derailed his life, who was coasting on something vague while he did the real work. What Diane didn't know, because I never told her, was what I was actually building. I left the consulting firm 18 months after Iris was born, and started my own practice. Operations consulting. What that means, simply, is I find out why businesses are losing money in places they can't see. Supply chains with hidden problems. Staffing structures that look fine on paper and fall apart in practice. The kind of waste that never shows up clearly until someone trained to find it goes looking. I started with one client. By the end of year 1, I had 6. By year 3, I had 12 employees. A small office downtown. Clients in the regional top 50 by revenue. Here's a number. Because numbers are the only thing that ever actually changes a story someone's decided to believe. Last fiscal year, my firm generated just under $3.1 million in revenue. I told almost no one in Theo's family. Theo knew. My own parents knew. They were proud, the quiet way my parents have always been proud of things. But I'd decided, somewhere around year 2, I wasn't going to spend energy trying to change Diane's opinion of me. I wasn't hiding it out of shame. I just understood, eventually, that nothing I did was ever going to move her. Her opinion of me was never about evidence. It was decided the moment she found out I was pregnant. Every year after that was just material to confirm a conclusion she'd already reached. People who decide who you are before they have any information don't update the model when the information shows up. They ignore it. Or they reframe it. Or they wait for something else that fits better. So I stopped trying. I built my company. I raised my daughter. I went to the dinners I couldn't reasonably skip. I absorbed the comments. And I went home. Theo wasn't blind to any of this. He confronted his mother more times than I can count. She'd soften, briefly. Apologize in that vague way she always apologized. Then go right back to form within a few weeks. Around year 3, we made a decision together. Limit our exposure to Diane. Stop expecting her to change. Because expecting it was its own kind of work, and we had better uses for our energy. Now I need to tell you about Priya. Priya is my director of client services. She runs intake. New consultations come through our website. She schedules them. I don't manage that calendar in detail. This matters a lot, and you'll see why. On a Tuesday in October, Priya put a new consultation on my calendar. 2 o'clock. The intake form listed the client as D. Calloway, representing a company called Brightwell Textile Holdings. I'm going to be honest. I didn't connect the name immediately. Calloway is my husband's last name. It's mine too, professionally. Diane Calloway, on paper, was just another prospective client who happened to share my last name. Which isn't as strange a coincidence as it sounds. Priya had met Diane exactly once, at a holiday party 2 years earlier. She had no reason to remember her either. I glanced at the form again before the meeting. Brightwell Textile Holdings. Mid-sized. Family-owned. Looking for help with supply chain inefficiencies. Exactly my specialty. I want to tell you something I hadn't known until that day. Diane wasn't just Theo's mother who occasionally helped with his father's business. She was the acting chief operating officer of Brightwell. Had been for 2 years, since her husband semi-retired. She ran the company day to day. And the company had a problem her own team couldn't solve. Big enough that she went looking outside for help. She arrived 4 minutes early. Priya texted me from the front desk. Your 2 o'clock is here early. Send her back, I texted. I'll be ready in a minute. I straightened the intake folder on my desk. I want you to understand something about me in client meetings. I'm composed. By nature and by years of practice. I don't perform warmth I don't feel. But I also don't let personal history leak into professional settings. Whatever happened in the next 20 minutes, I'd already decided, before I even knew who was walking through the door, that I'd run it exactly the way I run every consultation. Precision. Attention. Complete neutrality. I had no idea how much that composure was about to be tested. Or how useful it was about to become. The door opened. Diane walked in. Wearing a cream blazer I recognized from at least 3 family gatherings. Carrying a leather folio. Scanning my office the way she scans anything she considers beneath immediate respect. She looked at the award on my wall. The furniture. The view through my window. And I watched her face do this small recalibration. The recognition that this was more serious than she'd maybe expected from a name on an intake form. She didn't look at me directly. Not really. She glanced at me the way you glance at someone whose job is to serve you. Registered I was a woman roughly her son's age in a blazer. Sat down without shaking my hand. Without introducing herself. I'm here about the distribution issue, she said. Opening her folio. I assume your assistant explained the basics. We're losing margin somewhere in our regional network and my team can't find it. That's correct, I said. I have your intake form. Before we get into specifics, can I confirm a few details about your company structure? She answered efficiently. And I want to be fair here. She was sharp. She understood her business. Clear answers about revenue. Staffing. The warehouses where the problem seemed concentrated. For about 4 minutes, this was just a competent intake meeting. I took notes the way I take notes in every meeting. Then, in the gap between 2 questions, while I was writing something down, she filled the silence with something that had nothing to do with Brightwell. You know, she said. Conversational. Like small talk. My son had so much promise before he settled down. Theo. My son. Brilliant engineer. He had offers from companies on the coast. Real opportunities. And then he got involved with someone who. She made a small gesture with her hand. The one I'd watched her make at 5 years of family dinners. Let's just say the timing of certain events made his choices for him. I kept my pen moving. My expression neutral. She got pregnant rather conveniently, Diane continued. Warming up to it. Right before the wedding. And once there's a baby involved, what's a decent man supposed to do? He gave up so much. The coastal opportunities. The kind of life he could have had with someone more. She paused. Searching for the word. More ambitious, I suppose, is the kind way to put it. I looked up from my notes. I want to describe this moment carefully. Because it's the hinge point of the whole story. The most honest thing I can tell you is that something very calm settled into place inside me. Not anger. The stillness that comes from suddenly understanding exactly what's happening. And exactly what you're going to do about it. I have a daughter from that, she added. Almost as an afterthought. She's a sweet little thing. Takes after Theo, thankfully. I set my pen down. That's an interesting way to describe your daughter-in-law, I said. Diane glanced up. Mildly surprised. Not alarmed. Well, she said. You understand, it's not personal. I just believe in being honest. Rather than pretending everything's some kind of fairy tale. A small, brittle laugh. Some women know exactly what they're doing when they get pregnant at the right moment. I'm going to tell you what I said next. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't lean forward. I said it in exactly the same register I'd used to ask about her warehouse staffing 5 minutes earlier. Because the whole weight of this moment depended on saying it calm. I said, I'm not sure I'm following. Are you talking about Renata Calloway? Her expression flickered. The flicker of someone whose train of thought just got derailed. Yes, she said. Theo's wife. Why? Because, I said. I am Renata Calloway. I watched it happen the way you watch weather change. First confusion. A small line between her eyebrows. Her mind trying to fit information that didn't match the frame she'd been working with for the last 5 minutes. Then a flicker of something like denial. The instinct your brain has when it briefly refuses information that contradicts expectation too sharply. Then, Slowly. The actual landing of it. Her eyes moving from my face to the business license on the wall. Callaway Operations Group. Then to my nameplate. Which she'd apparently walked past without reading. Because why would you read the nameplate of someone you'd already decided was beneath your notice? I am, she said carefully. Talking to Renata. My son's wife. Yes, I said. The color that left her face didn't come back quickly. I want to describe this without cruelty. What I felt wasn't triumph. Not exactly. It was something closer to watching a story collapse under the simple weight of fact. The way any story built on assumption eventually collapses when it meets the actual person it was built about. She tried, for a moment, to recover. The way executives are trained to recover. I see, she said. Well. This is. She stopped. Started again. I had no idea this was your company. No, I said. I don't imagine you did. I want to tell you what was going through my head during the silence after that. I'd spent 5 years absorbing comments designed to diminish me. I'd decided, deliberately, not to fight them. Because fighting would have required convincing Diane of something. And convincing her had never been the point of my life. The point had been building something real. Raising my daughter. Being a good partner. Letting the results speak for themselves to anyone capable of listening. Diane had spent 5 years not listening. And now, by pure accident, she was sitting in the physical proof of everything she decided I couldn't possibly be. I had a choice in that moment. I could have ended the meeting. I could have told her exactly what I thought of 5 years of comments delivered under the cover of honesty. I considered it. Briefly. I didn't do that. I picked my pen back up. Mrs. Callaway, I said. Would you like to continue this consultation? Or reschedule with a different consultant at the firm? Either option is fine. It won't affect the quality of work you get from this firm. I watched her process the offer. And I want you to know I meant it. I wasn't trying to trap her into an awkward hour out of some need to watch her squirm. I run a business. The actual problem she described, the margin loss, was real. It affected a real company. 200 employees. My personal feelings about Diane weren't relevant to whether Brightwell deserved competent help. She sat with the question. She said. I want to continue. If you're willing. I'm willing, I said. Let's get back to the warehouse staffing. We spent the next 40 minutes in exactly the kind of meeting I'd have with any client. And Diane, once she got her composure back, was genuinely competent to work with. Clear answers. Pulled up data when I asked. Took notes on the homework I assign every new client. By the end, we had the outline of a real engagement. 6 weeks to find exactly where Brightwell was losing money. She didn't apologize during that meeting. I want to be honest about that. A tidier version of this story would have her in tears the moment she realized her mistake. That's not what happened. What happened is a sharp, defensive woman absorbed something that contradicted a story she'd told herself for 5 years. And she did what people do when they're not ready to process something. She compartmentalized it. Finished the meeting professionally. Shook my hand at the door. A small, stiff handshake. I'll have my team send the financial documents you requested. I'll be in touch within the week, I said. She paused at the door. Renata, she said. First time in 5 years she used my name without that specific coolness. I want to make sure. Does Theo know about this? About the meeting? Not yet, I said. I imagine I'll tell him tonight. She nodded once. And left. I told Theo over dinner. After Iris was asleep. He didn't laugh, exactly. There was something close to disbelief on his face as I walked him through it. He sat still for a long moment. Turning his water glass slowly on the table. She said all that, he said. In your office. Not knowing it was you. She did, I said. He was quiet a while longer. Then he said something I think about often. I think some part of me always knew she'd run into the wall of who you actually are eventually, he said. I just thought it would happen at one of our dinners. Where I could see it and say something. I didn't expect it to happen somewhere I couldn't even be there to watch. He called his mother the next morning. I don't know everything that was said. I wasn't part of it. Didn't ask to be. But Theo told me afterward it was the first time in his entire life he'd heard his mother genuinely struggle to find words. He told her, calmly but directly, that 5 years of comments weren't just unkind. They were factually, demonstrably wrong. And the fact she'd now felt the gap between assumption and reality firsthand didn't erase the years of comments made in front of family. In front of friends. In front of their own daughter. I didn't ask Theo to do this. I want to be clear about that. I've never needed him to manage his mother's opinion of me. I wouldn't have asked him to fight that battle for me if he hadn't chosen it himself. But he did. On his own. That morning. Because 5 years of watching his mother diminish his wife had apparently been sitting somewhere inside him the whole time. Waiting for the moment it became impossible to keep absorbing quietly. Diane emailed me 3 days later. Not a call. Not a conversation in person. An email. Which tells you something about how she processes discomfort. It was short. She'd reflected on our meeting. Wanted to formally apologize for comments that were, and I'm quoting, inappropriate and based on assumptions she should have questioned a long time ago. She hoped we could move forward. As professionals. And, separately, as family. I responded professionally. Confirmed the project timeline. Thanked her for the apology without making any particular emotional commitment in return. I want to be honest. I haven't fully resolved how I feel about Diane. One consultation, however dramatic, doesn't undo 5 years of comments designed to make me feel small in front of people I loved. Apologies that come because reality forced the issue aren't the same as apologies that come because someone genuinely reconsidered their own behavior. I'm still watching, months later, to see which one this actually was. What I can tell you is the outcome of the consulting work itself. That part is simple. My firm finished the diagnostic on Brightwell's network over 6 weeks. We found the problem. A regional warehouse manager running an inefficient routing system for years. Costing the company close to $300,000 a year. The kind of slow bleed that never shows up as one alarming number. It just adds up. Year after year. We presented our findings. A restructuring plan. Diane implemented it within the quarter. It worked. She stayed a client. My firm now handles ongoing consulting for 2 divisions of Brightwell. And working with her professionally has been, against every expectation I walked in with, genuinely fine. She's sharp. She listens to expert input in a business context in a way she never extended to me personally. Whatever knot of assumptions governs how she sees her daughter-in-law, it doesn't seem to extend to how she treats a consultant whose competence she's now seen directly. Repeatedly. In a context she can't argue with. The family dinners are different now. Not perfect. Diane hasn't turned into a warm, effusive mother-in-law. I don't expect that. It's not who she is, with anyone, in any context. But the specific comments, the trapped him, the lack of direction, the little hobby, those have stopped. She asks real questions about my work now. The kind that mean she's finally decided to treat what I do as real. Not as a cover story for a woman who got pregnant at an inconvenient time. She's referred to me by my actual title in front of other people. Twice, since the meeting. I know that sounds like a low bar after 5 years. It is. But it's also, undeniably, more than I had before. I think about that meeting often. The 4 minutes before she realized who I was. Because I think it captures something about how people build stories about each other. And what it actually takes to break those stories once they've hardened into belief. Diane didn't change her mind because I argued with her. Or because Theo defended me at 100 dinners. Both of those things happened, repeatedly, over 5 years, and accomplished basically nothing. She changed because she got confronted, by accident, with undeniable, specific proof that the story she'd built, a woman who trapped her son and settled for an unambitious life, was simply false. And she got confronted with it somewhere her usual tools didn't work. The dismissive gestures. The vague implications. The brittle laugh. All useless. Because the evidence was sitting across a desk from her. holding a folder with her own company's financial data inside. I didn't plan that meeting. I want to be completely clear about that. The most honest part of this story is that the most effective response to 5 years of being underestimated wasn't a confrontation I orchestrated. It was just the accumulated, undeniable result of building something real. While someone else was busy deciding, in advance, that I couldn't possibly be capable of it. If you've spent years being defined by someone else's worst assumption about you, a single comment delivered at the wrong dinner, a single circumstance that happened to coincide with a big life decision, a single thing that became, in someone else's mind, the entire story of who you are. I want you to hear something I had to learn slowly. Over 5 years of dinners I couldn't always avoid. You don't owe anyone a debate about your own worth. You especially don't owe that debate to someone who decided the verdict before they ever had access to the evidence. The most useful thing you can do, the only thing that actually works, is the thing that takes the longest and asks the least permission. Keep building. Keep showing up for the life and the people that are actually yours. Let the truth, when it finally walks through the door, however it happens to walk through, do the talking that years of arguing never could. That's my story. A consultation that started with a stranger insulting a woman she'd never met, and ended with her finding out, 4 minutes too late, that the woman was sitting right in front of her the whole time. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever been underestimated by someone who decided who you were before they ever actually knew you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Signed in Silence. Because the next story is already waiting. And the woman in it is about to discover something that changes everything she thought she understood about her own family. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I'll see you in the next one.